Yeah. So I had mentioned that we will revisit the improper integral uh, today and any other questions. So how would you like to do it? Are there other questions or you're still thinking, and let me start with the improper integral?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, I was reading Abbott and there was this question that if sigma an is a series which converges conditionally, then sigma n square an diverges. You have to prove this or provide a counterexample.
Wait. An is a series which is converging
Conditionally.
Then
n square an diverges. The series n square n.
well, such kind of things, if you have sent me earlier, I would have thought of easier. Now, with my medical thing, I can't immediately think about problems of this kind. Straight away giving a counter example. Okay. My gut feeling is this may not be true. But conditionally convergent, but not absolutely convergent. I guess that is what is meant, right?
Yes, sir.
Then n square an is
divergent.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if n square an is convergent, even conditionally, okay, if n square an is convergent, then what would happen? Even for a conditionally convergent series, the nth term must go down to 0, right? So,
yes, sir. Yeah.
So therefore, even if it is conditionally convergent, n square an will go to 0, which will mean an will be less than equal to 1 by n square, some constant times or whatever, for a large n, and that will force an to be absolutely convergent.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense, yeah.
So if an summation an is conditionally convergent but not absolutely convergent, then n square an will be divergent. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it is strange. I mean, some thought that I have to process it and speak it up, it takes sometimes a lot more time than what I had bargained for. But right now, it worked all right. But okay. Anybody else?
Sir, I had a question. So,
Yeah.
so if a function f is Riemann integrable on an interval, is Riemann integrable on a subinterval?
Just a minute. Let me pull up blank space. Yeah. So now what is your question once again?
If a function is Riemann integrable on an interval, is it also Riemann integrable on a subinterval?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So let me share screen. Oh. Answer is yes. Question is, how do we prove it now? Let's see what else is needed to prove it. Okay, so and Answer is yes. And now let us see. To show so the let's first do heuristics. Okay. So if you go back to the picture we had started off with by area below a curve, okay, area under a curve, f, and the lines x equal to a and x equal to b were parallel to the y-axis and then the x-axis. This is our system. Now, there it is clear that if you this AB you take a subinterval, that you should be able to define the area, right? So the same idea we have to now do it here, and the task is very easy because we know that f is Riemann integrable on AB means that given an epsilon positive, we have a P such that U A B F P minus L A B F P is less than epsilon, right? We have also done that if you have a partition and you refine the partition, then the upper bounds go down, lower bounds go up, and therefore the gap between upper and lower will be always less than equal to the earlier gap. So now let me just, instead of writing out, I can only talk to it. So let's just add the points C and D to the partition P. Okay. If they're no harm done, otherwise we add these 2 points. And so we will still have that the upper bound ABFP minus LABFP is less than epsilon. Right now, P is the partition of A to B, but C and D are also there. So if you take only only points in P from C and D, the upper and lower bound difference will be still the same. Less than equal to this upper and lower bound difference. And therefore, if we define P tilde to be P intersected with CD, or I can do one more proper. Begin with if I so first add the 2 points and then take the intersection, and then you can argue that U C D F P tilde minus L C D F P tilde is still less than epsilon. Right? So we have used 2 things. One is if you add something to P, then the upper and lower bounds, the gap only goes down. And somebody may be wondering, what if there are negative numbers and so on? Doesn't matter what is the positive, negative. U and upper and lower on any subinterval, the upper is always with the maximum and the lower is always with the minimum. So upper and lower, this gap will always be sum of non-negative numbers.
Sir, but when we are taking the intersection with the CD interval, then we are, I mean, probably we are also removing some points, right?
Yeah, but for each point removed, the upper will be always be contributing more to the lower. So let's do the following. Suppose you take, there is a P.
Okay, so in magnitude, the upper sum and always decrease and the lower sum always increase.
Wait. I'm now making a different observation. Suppose P is this. Okay. Now, we can at one shot write down what is ABFP minus LABFP. This is equal to summation K equal to 1 to M supremum over X, sorry, right? Upper and lower, each is a sum of k terms. So I just put them together. Upper is the supremum on this interval times the length of the interval, and lower is infimum of that times length of the interval. So we can, it is finite sum, so I can rearrange the terms, and now I have written like this. And now it is true that this quantity is always non-negative, and so is this. So even if I, whatever subset of k that instead of 1 to m, I choose it as some subset here of, the u minus L can only go down.
Yes, sir. Yes. Like,
Yeah.
yes, sir. This makes sense. Yeah.
So you have two things here. One is that when you add points to a partition, u's go up, L goes down, and the gap reduces. Other part is that in U and L, if you just chop off the endpoints or chop off few points on both sides, the gap can only come down, not go up. Each one can go up, go down, anything we are not saying, because that will depend on the sign of function. Okay. But the gap U minus L can only come down, even if you drop some initial ones or end ones. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other thoughts?
Sir, I didn't get why will chopping off decrease the gap. Can you please explain once?
Okay, so firstly, we are only chopping off points which are already covered in the partition. Okay. So if, for example, I take P tilde to be x4, x5, xm. So I've chopped off the first few points. Then all that will happen is sum will be k equal to 5 to m, the same sum. Now, the terms of the each term in the summation is non-negative. So if we drop off of first 4 points, you will only come down, not go up. That is the point.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir. I get it now.
Huh?
I get it now, sir.
Yeah. And therefore, if we come back to the original question now, I'm not chopping off to begin with. I'm first adding those points in the interval so that from P we go up to something else which already has points C and D. And we use our first result that if you take a refinement of the interval, the upper and lower, the gap only reduces. So you first add the points.
So this actually explicitly shows the partition, I mean, for which the gap will be less than for a given epsilon. I mean, we add C comma D formally and then take the intersection.
Yeah. So here, this explanation, that the last line on the screen that you see is not just one step, it is combination of 2 steps. So let's call this P bar. So first we have that the U minus L for P bar is also less than epsilon. And then U minus L of P tilde is less than U minus L of P bar. Okay. Any questions about this part? And now you can relate it to the figure that we had drawn about area under the curve. You are taking a subset. So first add those 2 points in your partition. Now it is clear that for each subinterval, the upper and lower contribution, the gap is always non-negative, and we are only chopping off some endpoints. So not all mathematicians agree, but I certainly think that one should constantly keep doing things on both sides. One is heuristic thinking and looking at that in a graph or in a picture or something like that, and then writing the mathematical steps. Sometimes it becomes difficult. Some steps can be so complicated that imagining it or putting it equivalent to some graphs and so on may be difficult. But at least wherever possible, one should try to do that. But not all maths guys agree. Okay. Any other thing you would like me to do? If not, I wanted to revisit the Riemann integral, improper Riemann integral. The reason is I'm going to slightly change the tracks. Initially, when we talked about I was trying to use only sequential convergence, and then the statements became too complicated. So we had to take for all sequences, and I argued that if you take some subsequences, it can be going wrong. So there are simpler ways of writing without making all kind of choices via directly talking about limit of a function which is defined on the interval itself. So,
Hello, sir.
yeah.
Sir, in the theorem where we proved that if a function differs from other at a single point, then it's if the previous one was Riemann integrable, then the changed one is also Riemann integrable and the value is same.
Yeah.
In that argument, actually, if the function that is differing from the integrable function at a single point, that difference point should have a real number, I mean a finite value, right? I mean the argument that we use.
Yeah, because it has to have finite value, because once you add an infinite value, it is no longer Riemann integrable in our definition.
Oh, okay. Yes.
After we bring in the improper, then we can say that even if that value is infinity, the improper integral is the same as the earlier one.
Okay, sir.
If one point you pick and you give its value to be infinity, it is no longer Riemann integrable, but it will be improper Riemann integral will be there, will exist, and that equals the given.
Yes.
So, firstly, improper Riemann integral with either f unbounded or AB could be an interval with infinite length. That is, either A or B could be infinity. And by convention in math, any kind of mathematical writing, or is always inclusive or. So if you say that A or B, we do not rule out the possibility of both A and B always. If you want exactly one out of the two, that is called exclusive or, and the other one is called inclusive or. And in mathematics, generally, in mathematical writing, or is always inclusive or. All right. So in this example here, f can be unbounded and the interval could be infinite, and the interval could be infinite by having both A and B to be infinity. So we can have combination of all three in this statement. The function could be unbounded, A could be minus infinity, and B could be infinity. Okay. And convention is that closed AB is always a subset of R, even when A is minus infinity or B is infinity. Okay. So that is the other standard convention in math. Unless you have declared that now your subsets are of R bar, namely the extended real line, then you can still include infinity in the closure and say that this is the interval AB or interval 0 to infinity closed at both ends includes infinity if you have already declared that you are working on R bar, but typically one doesn't. Okay. So and simpler to actually write the definitions via in the cases. Suppose that A is in R, B is in R bar, and for all U in A to B, F is Riemann integrable on A to B. So the improperness or the problem is only happening near the point B. Okay. The function could be becoming unbounded near B, or the B itself could be infinity. Both the possibilities. Okay. But we are demanding that for as long as we exclude B, you go slightly below B, so A to U is a strict subset of A to B closure at B. And when B equal to infinity, then it means that this A to B closed is U is strictly less than B also. Okay. So for all U belonging to A, B, by my definition, when B is infinity, okay, A to B will still, so U will always be in this definition. In our convention here, U will always be in real line, even if B is infinity. Okay. So A to U, A is in R, U is in R. So A to U is a closed bounded interval. And so we have defined Riemann integrability. And if we have that as soon as you chop off B and take anything slightly lesser, slightly if B is a finite number, and of course a finite number if B is infinite number, then F is Riemann integrable on AU. F is said to be improper Riemann integrable on AB if you take integral from A to U and take the upper bound limit as U increases to B. If that limit exists, we write A to B fx dx is alpha. And so, and to understand our convince, you take let's take examples. A is 0, B is 1, and fx is 1 over square root 1 minus x. For x in open interval 0, 1, and at f of 1 it is 0. At f of 1 we can define it to be any number. I just define it to be 0. Then we can verify that if you take u strictly less than 1, it exists. You can compute it. And then we can verify that its limit as u goes to 1 exists. And we can compute that. So that is what we call the improper Riemann integral of fx dx on the interval 0 to 1. So in this example, our function f was going to infinity, increasing as x goes to 1. Because the denominator coming closer and closer to 0. So square root also coming closer and closer to 0. So reciprocal of that blowing off to infinity. In my first example. Okay. So the function, even the discussion about whether it is Riemann integrable or not fails because our function is not bounded. Though I have not read a book which uses this notion, but I am sure that there exist statements which define Riemann integral without bringing in boundedness. But then you can't talk supremum, infimum, etc. unless you are allowing infinities in the sums. And then you can talk about you take any values in that set, etc. So there are variations available on various themes. Okay. This is a commonly used way of defining integrals, and that is what we are sticking to. That is not the only way. There one can straight away define this integral without calling it improper. So for those who got confused by what I said, instead of taking supremum, infimum, and upper bound, we say that for any partition P, you look at any valuation point. So take xk minus 1 less than equal to sk less than equal to xk. So your partitions, for each partition, you take a point in between, and then you look at summation f sk xk plus 1 minus xk k equal to 1 to n. So now, instead of upper and lower and taking supremum and infimum, we say any evaluation point. You take any evaluation point in that subinterval. This. If for all choices of SK, these and for all choices of partitions, if this object converges to alpha, you call that to be the integral of f over the required interval. And then there is nothing proper and improper. We can include both of them in the same breath. But that is not something which is commonly done. So one very important lesson, you pick up a new book, it uses the same phrase that you have been taught, and they write out a theorem. Before you quote that theorem, you better ensure that their definition of whatever phrases being you say Riemann integral are the same as your phrase of defining Riemann integral, your definition. There are examples on books published where they define an object in a certain way, and they quote a theorem from another book where that same theme has been defined differently, and the theorem they quote is wrong or incorrect when it is read in this framework defined by that book. This has happened with books also. So you have to be ultra careful. All right. So we are sticking to our definition of upper and lower things and not via any evaluation points. But I'm just pointing out that there exists alternate ways of doing integration. Okay. The other example is now a is 0, b is infinity, and my function is, oh, why did I write square root 1 over x? Just 1 over x square. Square root 1 over x square will be mod x or x. So 1 over x square, the function is unbounded. A function is bounded everywhere, but the interval is unbounded. You can take the interval of 0 to u 1 over x square dx. You know how it will be, and that limit exists, so this will be Riemann integral. Of course, 1 over square root x square is more just 1 over x, and while it is not even improper Riemann integrable because the integral doesn't 0 to u if you take and take the limit, it doesn't convert. It goes up to infinity. So these two examples, first one, b was finite, but the function was unbounded. Second, b was infinite, but function was bounded. And as I pointed out, we allow both things exploding. So the interval can be infinite and b can be unbounded, and you can still have improper integration.
Sir, but the second function is not bounded at 0, right?
Wait. Oh yes. So wait. Yeah. So wait. Error in writing and right now error. So this could be yeah. 1/1 plus x square. Wanted an example where 0 to u integral exists is finite and the limit exists as u goes to infinity. So here is the right example. So now the interval could be infinite and f can be unbounded. Is any one of you thinking how can both be true together? Well, here is a example. Remember here a to be 0, b to be infinity, and fx is n, and in the interval 2n to 2n plus 2 power minus n, okay, you define fx to be n and is 0 else otherwise. So you are going far away, and but a small interval there, fx is n. So f is unbounded. On the entire line, if you take on entire positive half line, f is unbounded. And but we can compute and check that this is actually improper integral will exist. And we can take and check that 0 to 2 power n fx dx is summation k equal to 1 to n minus 1 k by 2 power k. This series converges. So it is possible for f to be unbounded as well as the interval to be unbounded, and still you can have an improper Riemann integral being defined, being existing. And this is a simple example. This is not continuous, but one can make this to be a continuous example as well. Gx equal to, you take this same interval 2 power n to 2 power n plus 2 power minus n. At the two endpoints, it can be 0, and at exactly at the half, you take the halfway point, and you take the at that point it is equal to n, and then you take linear lines, etc. So you can very easy to convert this example to a continuous function. So even continuity will not solve your issue. You can still have an improper Riemann integral existing where the function is unbounded as well as the interval is unbounded and the function is continuous. Any questions on this? Now, earlier when I was trying to write through sequences, then we'll have to say that f is said to be improper Riemann integrable on a to b if for all sequences un going to infinity, integral a to un fx dx exists and is equal to alpha. But that is just rephrasing limit of a function of a u. So if I think about this as a function, let's call it some theta of theta of u, then we basically have to talk about theta u goes to alpha if u goes to b is same as for every sequence un going to b, theta of un converges to alpha. So it's not different from what I had said last time, but it's simply easier to say rather than for every sequence. So it's not different from what I did last time, but our definition, but it's simply easier to state. Case 2. Suppose now B is real line, but A is R bar. So and F is Riemann integrable on U to B. So the earlier our problems were the in both these examples, the lower bound was finite and our upper bound could have been infinite, or the problem of the function being unbounded were happening vicinity of the upper bound. Now, opposite, the upper bound is finite, the lower bound is could be infinity, and the if you take u to b, it is a proper Riemann integrable, usual Riemann integrable, and only near a there can be a problem. So improper integrable, if you now take the limit as u decreases to a, the same thing u to b fx dx, and that is equal to alpha, and you still call it a to b fx dx. And one example is fx equal to 1 by square root x. Now the problem is near 0 as x comes close to 0, not at 1. So this you can verify and see that this is Riemann integrable. And a equal to minus infinity, b equal to 0, and fx equal to 1 by 1 plus x cube. 1 minus I have to take because I am taking minus infinity. And the interval could be infinite or f could be unbounded. I am not writing the example. That old example we can tweak and make it blowing up to infinity on the as a point goes to minus infinity, but it's on smaller and smaller intervals so that its contribution to the overall integral doesn't blow up. Okay, so in both these examples, our thing was that and by problem, I mean problem in our definition. Okay, was at one endpoint. The other endpoint was not creating any problem as far as our definition was concerned. As soon as you approximate one endpoint, then the things were working out. That is what our first two cases are. Okay. And this is the case where we did some discussion when we were doing the sequential, and we had a very complicated looking thing. So it's much easier if you do as a functions. So suppose a, b both are in R bar. So and it is such that if you move slightly above a and you come slightly below d, then f is Riemann integrable on CD, but is not Riemann integrable. But for any, if you just take one point in between, then it fails to be Riemann integrable on at both ends. So the problem is happening at both ends. Then our case 1, case 2 will not give you an answer here. Okay. So A to C also is not there and C to B is also not there. So our limits earlier I think will not work. But in this case, you say that f is improper Riemann integrable on AB if you fix a C between A to B, this C, and then you f is the improper Riemann integrable if the improper integral on A to C is defined and C to B is defined. And then you define A to B as A to C plus C to B. And it can be shown that this integral definition as well as its value does not depend on C as long as f is Riemann integrable on So the choice of C doesn't matter. I'll explain that in a minute, but first understand the definition. When we had to break sequentially, remember we had said for all sequences A going to A and for all sequences B going to B, we should have had some expression. That is easier to do when you are doing without bringing in the sequential definition. You take it this way and then you just say that if you want to decode this, you will see that for every UN going to C and for every Vn going to C, the two integrals should work, etc. Not sorry. UN going to A and Bn going to B. But if you separate the two, then we can remove sequential definition where both the sequences have to be going to infinity or as n goes to infinity without any relation between them. So that can be avoided by and easier to verify things and check by just saying that A to B is by just A to U, A to C and C to B.
Sir,
Sir, could you explain the theorem once? I mean, I'm a bit confused about what exactly the theorem is saying.
Wait. Where is the theorem? At the moment, this is definition.
Sir, yes, sir. I mean, the definition only.
Ah.
I mean, could you give a picture or something?
Yeah. So we have two examples, e power minus x squared, right? So it's a x in R. So we want to integrate minus infinity to infinity. Okay. So if this function is improper Riemann integrable, say 0 to infinity as well as from minus infinity to 0, you take the sum and say that that is the improper integral of. So if improper integral 0 to infinity e power minus x squared by 2 x squared only, there is no by 2. Both improper. If both these things exist, then we say that the improper integral of this function from minus infinity to infinity exists and it is equal to the sum.
Okay, sir. Now I understood. I mean, I was not being able to understand what the role of D in the definition.
Or there is no, so that D, there is no definite role, but D is just saying that you take any subinterval, strict subinterval, then it is Riemann integrable there.
Okay. Okay.
So that when we are taking the improper integral A to C, the improper is happening only at C. It is improper. We are now in case 1 or case 2. That way. That's what.
Okay, sir.
That is
I
the
see.
role. That there are no parallel. There are no issues at C at both ends. And for that to ensure, we have that for every subinterval, it is proper Riemann integral. The problems are only happening at the endpoints. Maybe I should do the following here. I will rewrite this case 3 instead of this. Here I will put some U and V. So that will be dealing from the C which is following. So those 2 points have, but this is just to ensure that if you the problems are only happening close at A and at B. Okay, anywhere in between, everything is fine. And then here you have 1 over square root x into 1 minus x. Both endpoints are finite, but both at 0 and at 1 we have difficulties. Difficulties that the function is getting blown up. So you can take integral from 0 to half and from half to 1, and you will not have any issue. And you can add that. And how can we show that the Riemann integral, the choice of C will not matter? So let's say there is one choice is C and another choice is D. D is also or V. And then we take integral now you can take case, let's take, you can just say that, let's say V is smaller than C. Okay, when V is smaller than C, then A to C, we can write it as A to V plus V to C, this integral. So we have got the first term, and then V to C you add to V to B and you will get C to B. So, and this we can do for before we get to the limiting of question, etc. This was defined with the limit as U goes to A, and this one is defined as a limit with U goes to B. So before the limit, we can take this and work it out. So the and we can just add a thing which is never useful in any actual definition or any actual problem. But if by changing, if you change the function at finitely many points and it is bounded, then we can still include improper integrability. No book defines it that way, but that example that at one point you change it and make it equal to infinity, that will not cover in any of these 3 cases, but it is trivially covered by if you bring in that kind of definition, but unnecessary. If at a few points only it is infinity, you just define it to be 0. It's not going to make any impact on your conclusions.
What if the function is unbounded and somewhere in between the interval?
So the
So you had told that any sub-interval will be Riemann integrable.
yeah, the best way to deal it is with via subintervals. I mean, yeah, as I said, this business about Riemann improper Riemann integrable varies from author to author. I was just checking that one of our books, a very popular book, Rudin, as from I could not search any definition of improper integral in Rudin. And what I have done today is follows what is there in another popular book by Apostol. Now, improper integration where the function is unbounded even in between intermediate points. If these points are finitely many, then we can cover it by just taking that if you can subdivide your interval into finitely many, so that on each one improper integral is defined, then the improper is defined as their sum. But we can have an example where this phenomena you mentioned is happening at infinitely many intervals. So if you have to do it, you can come up with the definition of improper Riemann integral for that case also.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But as I explained that Riemann integral is still studied because one, the original definition is fairly easy to give even in a first course like we did today, number one. Number two, when we extend these integrals to various other scenarios, there are examples where it is useful to use the Riemann way of going. Okay. What I mean by this, you will discover as you study mathematics at higher and higher levels. Some of you may come up and encounter them. But when we come down to reals or even n-dimensional, and you want to do integral of function like you mentioned that the unboundedness could be closer to points as well, etc., etc. It's better to do Riemann integral. Okay. And for example, in Lebesgue integral, if you take a function which is at a rational point alpha, at a rational point x, it is equal to 1 over x, and if you want to avoid the 0, you can say at a rational point x, it is equal to 1 over x minimum at all points other than 0. Okay. At all points other than 0, you give this value. So now, the intermediate point, it is unbounded, and then you can still show that your function is integrable in the Lebesgue case. But here, improper thing doesn't work because on all, when you are changing things at all rational points, you are already gone for a toss. So when we come to real numbers, the most useful framework which is become popular and sticks is the Lebesgue integral. Okay. Anything else? So you have to tell me about next week. What do you want to do? Should we anyway have a class? Should we not have a class? We have a class only if some of you write to me. What do we do? Is there any exam next week?
No, sir.
No. So let me suggest one thing. 3 sessions may be too much. And so let's do that. Wednesday we will meet. Tuesday let us not meet. But you on Tuesday you spend your time going over parts which we have done, etc., problems which I have sent, try to solve them, this, that. And your difficulties you mail to me. That will be easier for me to do rather than if you ask it on the cuff. And in any case, let's plan and meet on Wednesday. Friday's thing decision we will take on Wednesday. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, could you give us some problems on integration?
Okay. I will send some problems on integration. Yeah.
Okay.
And we will meet on Wednesday, not on Tuesday.
Sir, how do we prove that sin x is improper Riemann integral from 0 to infinity?
Sin x is
Sin x by x.
sin x by x.
We should prove that it is improper Riemann integral from 0 to infinity.
Yeah, that it requires quite a bit of work, which we will not do. So it's one of the most important ones, but it is not so easy to do. Okay.
Okay, sir.
We'll skip that one. The difficulty is that it is also not covered by Riemann integrable things, because in various examples we did, even if you have negative values, it is even with mod f it works, but this improper Riemann integrable doesn't exist. It's only 0 to infinity sin x by x dx. This exists. I'll search up, and if I see an easy enough way of doing this, or if one of you finds an easy enough way of doing this, send it to me. We can do that. But I had kept out of it because I know it's a very complicated thing, because there is the absolute convergence doesn't work. It is only because of this 0 to infinity sin x dx, because we are taking positive and negative both sin x. Only why that is why we have a definite, we know sin x the infinite series. So if you look at only the positive terms in the infinite series, that doesn't work. You only take negative ones, it doesn't work. But only when you do the sin x by x, it works. Maybe that gives me an idea of trying to see if I can work it out, but we'll see.
Okay, sir.
All right, then if we can stop also early, if there's nothing to ask.
Sir, can we show the integral by Cauchy condition or something, or something similar to integrals?
Which one? Which one?
Cauchy criteria, like for convergence of a sequence. Like, can we do something similar over here?
For integral, for improper integral.
For sin x by x integral, sir.
Sin x by x. No, I'm not so sure. Let's see.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yeah.
why can't we do the first one? Can't we just take endpoints as, I mean, a partition with n pi as endpoints and try to compute it that way? Because sign will change sign only at
No, but you have to take for all sequences going up. So we'll have to look at integral 0 to u sin x by x dx for all x, for all u. You can't take u to be only pi by n kind of thing. What, sorry, maybe what you may mention something different. What were you saying?
sign changes sign at only n pi, right? So we can take between those endpoints n pi and n plus 1 pi and then try to compute it.
I mean, each of you most welcome to try to compute, and if you can come up with a simple enough thing, we'll discuss that. Yeah. But I'm just going by my memory that in some places this integral is needed, and then the way we had done it was very complicated. That's all I remember for now. Probably the infinite series method may be easier, but we have not proven a theorem using that. But let's see. So each of you try yourself or look at books or internet and see. If you find a simple enough solution, let me know. Okay. Okay, then. Let's stop for the day. And by the way, if you collectively discuss or and you see that no, some lot more thing needs to be asked to me, and you want to also meet on Tuesday, that is also fine. You write to me and say that you have informed everybody on your WhatsApp group. That will suffice for me. Okay. If you want to meet on Tuesday. But Wednesday we are anyway meeting. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.